This week I decided to do a little bit different, in which, considering that I don't have kind of like a very specific movie that comes out that is gonna premiere this week that got me interested. I I decided to take opportunity to give myself a double feature on two movies that came out right at the same time as The Flash, and and in which, well, it got me interested to the point that I decided to do, of course, like I said, a double feature. I I went to see the and Elemental. The first one being this horror comedy, and of course the latest Pixar animated film that it's being considered right now being one of the worst box office bombs for Pixar standards, and but I do want to talk about the Blackening because that's the one that I watched first. But honestly, I feel like I want to talk first about Elemental first, because, well, is it is an animated movie, and I think that I am a little bit more passionate when I talk about animation, especially when it's about Disney slash Pixar in this case. And honestly, I do want to reiterate that even though I do kind of always have my disdain to all the Disney practices and their recent movies, I want to reiterate that I don't hate it. I don't hate Disney. I just don't like some of their latest practices, and like, for example, well, I still don't like what they did to the Little Mermaid. I don't agree with the remake, despite that I did said that uh, I did said that I thought that it was decent for, well, for the standard of Disney live action remake. But in the case of Pixar, I always try to not overhype it, because, well, Pixar is it's a very when in terms about animation, it kind of proves to be very competent. But lately, it feels like most of that magic touch it's been kind of like going down. A case in point last year, in which both movies ended up on being one of my worst of the list. I mean, Lightyear became my dishonorable mention, and I don't care what people says. I really hated Turning Red. I I didn't like it, and even if you like Turning Red, most of those movies, they didn't come up as big giant quality makers, or like for Pixar standards. And it is, and it kind of makes me sad saying that, because I know that there's a lot of passionate artists working on the industry. I mean, although it still kind of makes me trying to figure out what is going wrong with why do we like movies like Bugs Life, or the first Incredibles, or Toy Story? What makes that magic, and why it's not working right now, even though we know that they can do better than that. uh, and they can do good, but not as good as the last of those, the ones that we remember. Is it because we have our nostalgia goggles, and we kind of expect so much about them? So I am kind of like going into the balance, into wanting to forgive them or not, in one way or another. Uh, um, so it's I think that being harsh on Pixar was kind of unfair, especially. But I'm still being fair that I didn't like both Turning Red and Lightyear. So at this point, I thought that they need a movie to to bring me back to at least liking it at least well. You know what? Not I think I'm repeating at least a lot of times. But anyway, the point is that when I saw the trailer of Elemental, I was in a way finger crossed that the movie at least, so I say repeat it again, that the movie could come out okay for Pixar standards. But on the other hand, the trailer didn't do justice for me, because when I was watching it, the concept, which it was creative in itself, the trailers kind of showed the kind of movie that it was gonna be, and unfortunately, it kind of showcased that it was gonna be an animated version of a movie genre that I'm not fond of, and that is the rom-com. Romantic comedies is not exactly my cup of tea. I tried, and a lot of those romantic comedies, the more I watched them, I hated them. I hate it because romantic comedies, they're always technically relying on awkward humor, and a lot of smooshy dialogue, and a romance that for the most part I don't find any chemistry. And speaking of chemistry, this is what they were trying to do with Elemental. They decided to build up a romantic comedy, but in a world where the four natural elements live together. You know, earth, fire, wind, water, and heart. No, just kidding. Heart and not heart. Oh, it's almost a world that Captain Planet will be very happy if there was heart. And so we have, the teaser, the trailer is gonna, and it was gonna, and it shows what it shows. It's gonna be a romance between a fire girl and a water boy, and of course in the world there's also live the earth people, which is basically soil with sentient soil with tree branches, and air, which are cloud people. And my second grade memory kind of failed me, but until I saw a video of someone complaining about the trailer of Elemental, and someone said that, you know what, a cloud doesn't technically is air. Cloud is basically water, because a cloud is condensed water. So I leave that aside, and I gave myself the double feature alongside with the blackening. The blackening, I'm gonna leave it aside on my experience with that. Right now, I'm gonna talk about this video. I'm gonna talk about Elemental. But before I go with Elemental, I do also want to talk about that this movie comes with a short, a Pixar short, and it's based on Up. It is called Carl's Date. And to make a long story short, basically is that old man Carl and he lives now with his dog named Doug, and he has a date, and he feels like he has to look good, and he wants to buy present, and he gets he tries to practice his his hits with dog and all that. And it is technically a short comedy in which you just seeing shenanigans of one guy trying to do his best, to so he can prepare for his date. And it's kind of like it gave me a little bit of a chuckle, but it did although I think that it was kind of necessary, because the movie Up is one of those movies that I think it was better left alone without any short, any sequel, or because, well, the movie Up is a very emotional movie, and it didn't need a kind of like some kind of sequel or something, like, for example, saying, hey, what's this character gonna do next. But I do want to admit that there is indeed a kind of like a very emotional part at the end, in which and we know that Carl had his wife that passed away during the movie. It's not a spoiler. I bet everyone's watching it, and now he thinks that getting to know this new date is gonna be kind of like a new adventure, but he will never forget the woman that made him, and it leaves out in an emotional and a kind of quick but emotional ending. But we never see the date. Just I'll let you. The ending is left ambiguous and left imagination. So that's the Pixar short that we got. And now we're finally going for Elemental. And right in the get-go, for Pixar standards, I thought this movie was okay. Elemental was just okay. Certainly is much better than Turning Red. For once, it didn't annoy me like Turning Red. And it's not kind of like, it's not downright depressing or out of touch like Lightyear. Comparing to the ones that from last year. So it is an improvement in the way of storytelling, as well as the emotional part. Although I've been seeing some other reviews of other people, and I get some people kind of pointing out that some fallacies in considering the world building, and this is where the movie has its biggest problem, is that if you come out with over-analyzing this movie, you come out overthinking and about how the world works, how the element works, how nature works. This is where the world building falls flat to the point that is nonsensical. You kind of have to let your brain go away a little while to make this movie kind of like a bit more sense. So basically, it is. Although you kind of, I don't wanna be too harsh on the movie, because world building, especially of this caliber, is not exactly kind of like very easy. I might probably gonna admit that while the world building is a little bit similar to Zootopia, Zootopia did it better. There's some parts in which you might question some things, but you can tell that Zootopia they had a little bit and an easier time to build up an imaginative world compared to Elemental, because the Elemental is kind of like is technically another can of worms, and with a new kind of species that they are based on the natural elements. But man, that when you try to overthink about saying, this might not work, this might not work, this might not work because this elements work like this, elements work like that, and then you might feel like huh, maybe they didn't do well enough, and that is saying much considering that this came out coming up as kind of like a solid romantic comedy. So let's get down a little bit more in the nuts and bolts into this movie. Let's talk about the story because, like I said, the story centers on this fire girl named Ember. She grew up with her father and mother, and she is about to inherit the store that the father was working on because she's getting ready for when the father retires. He's getting too old, and the work is making him tired, and 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 of course, that one day while she's on charge, she almost loses her temper because this is an arc that she has, that she has a lot of temper on her nerves, and then she makes an accident during on the water pipes of the store. There she meets an inspector which is a water boy named Wade, and basically after shenanigans trying to not let him trying to find the leaks of the water pipes and trying to find a solution out of it, eventually Ember and Wade, they kind of fall in love, despite that. Well, she's a fire girl, he's a water boy, and what, like the movie says, elements don't mix. And in a way, I want to say that this is a little bit too convenient for the movie standards, because when someone says elements don't mix, I will say that it's not exactly true. There's something called alchemy, and alchemy is where elements mix to create a new element sometimes. For example, again, fire and water. Fire and water, they evaporate and create condensed water. It's another form of an element. It's still it is still kind of a combination, but you know what I'm getting at. Maybe I'm over analyzing this movie, and I don't wanna get too much into it. But there are some points that I do wanna point out about kind of like the world building. But if I do want to say some of the positives that have this movie. For example, for a romantic comedy, one of the key elements for a romance is questioning if the couple has chemistry. And my answer is yes. Both Amber and Wade, they are a cute couple. I'll give it that. That they're a cute couple, and I like their personalities. Most of the problems is kind of centered on Amber, and she has kind of like an interesting arc. For once, she comes out from a family of immigrants, and this is how this movie really wanted to emphasize a lot on the metaphorical level about comparing the fire element with immigrants, in which the movie really starts out with the father and the mother. They arrive to Elemental City. I know, lazy title. They reach Elemental City by boat, kind of like immigrants. Well, they are immigrants. They they couldn't get a rental place because, well, everyone is technically a jerk or a racist because saying we don't accept fire, go away. And then they find a place nobody wants, and so they build it from scratch and to make it a fire store, a store in which it is technically for it itself interesting elements for fire people. So fire people come and they have a place to hang out and everything. And you see that there is a relationship between the father and the father and the daughter. Amber has a good relationship with the father. What was the name of the father? Let me see it over there. Bernie. Bernie is the name of the father, and the mother is called Cinder. So so in so I really like the arc that Amber she tries to she's very grateful with her father. And she wants to fulfill his anticipation by being a good daughter and trying to run the store because she's gonna inherit the store, but she has problem with the customer because there's some customers that were really jerks, and she technically has that temper until she, of course, that one day when she was doing alone, she get her temper tantrum, which floods the basement of the store, and this is where Wade comes out. And now let me talk about Wade. He's basically kind of like the opposite of Ember. He's a very emotional guy, and there is this running gag that he's so emotional that, well, since he's a water person, he cries a lot. He's a big crybaby. But then it shows that he's not exactly the only crybaby. His family and other water people they are crybabies. They really cry about that. And at first it comes out, at first he and Ember they form kind of like an alliance in order to try to not fix the problem with the water pipes in order to so because if they don't fix the water pipe, they're gonna close the store, and they keep it in secret for their father because one thing that I now am gonna mention is that the father is a big racist. He is a big racist against water people. Mostly because it's technically understandable. Now I'm gonna get a little bit deeper into why it is kind of weird, kind of overanalyzing this job because, well, we understand water and fire don't mix because if water can kill a fire, and fire is kind of like a destructive force that technically destroys almost anything. There is so there are some limitations. So you can't make much of a free world when there are limitations to the elements for the sake of their survival. That's one thing that I have to say about how this world kind of like not work. There's also everyone is wearing clothes, and they kind of want to make kind of like a joke saying that, well, they wear clothes, but it's kind of like irrelevant and all that. Although doesn't clothes comes out from trees or no, that's from silk, from cotton. It is based on, depending on the material, cotton or silkworms or something like that. I'm overanalyzing this movie. I'm starting to ramble this movie. The more this is the problem that I have with this movie, is that the more you overthink the world building, it kind of makes you think that, you know what, this kind of makes no sense and all this does. all this stuff. And there's also the fire people that kind of makes me think that it's kind of surprising that if they're kind of like burning every time, doesn't that leave footprints every time they walk out? Man, that I'm really overthinking about this movie when I was supposed to be talking that yeah, there is a I like the chemistry between Wade and Amber. They form a cute couple the more the movie advances, and but again, of course, we you oh yeah, I was talking about how Amber has this. She goes into this emotional arc in which she wants to hide all these problems from her father because she doesn't want to disappoint him, and she also knows that the father is he doesn't like the water people, and she wants to she doesn't want to she wants to prove that she's a good daughter and inherit it. It will later showcase that she has other talents, and she begins to question if she really wants to inherit the firestorm. I'll leave it at that because I don't want to spoil too much. And and you can tell that they wanted to work a lot about these things, and they also build up and they also wanted to build up the kind of what was I going to talk about? Oh yeah, you know what? I think I fell astray because the movie makes me want to feel like rambling all the way or another because you know what? Let me talk about the animation, in which I am actually kind of glad that the animation is technically kind of like different compared to other Disney Pixar films. Since this is a world where there are no humans, but you can tell some of the Pixar human designs and like the shape of the nose, the shape of the eyes, and all that. But it's kind of still find it refreshing in a bit that well, there are elements, and I gotta give them credit that the animators went all of their way, to make the animation look well as appealing as it is. As it is, I really like the effects that the fire people. They really look good, and water is not exactly easy to animate. I mean, even I have difficulty drawing water when I want to draw water. So how do you think it is going to be with people animating water because water is tangible, it transforms in whatever it is, and they took in some ways they took advantage of the natural elements of both fire and water, and in some regards also some of earth and well, wind. Well, they're cloud people, but you know what? For the sake of not overanalyzing, let's call them wind, air, or whatever you want to call it. So, it got that. Here's and you know what? Here's a little bit also with the nitpick that I do have is that while there is another character that is relevant with wind, and it's only just there to kind of showcase, like for example, hey, this is the world that we live in. We only see the relationship, the world mostly between fire and water. We don't see much about of earth and wind. They just kind of like just there only to showcase the world that they live in. It is a world of of elements. Because they just wanted to, for the lack of better word, they wanted to showcase. They want to make a metaphor of racial profiling but in the case, for example, there's fire. People some don't like fire because they have to, their limitation and they destroy things. Yes, yeah. There are some scenes in which people are acting like jerks to the fire people. For example, there's also this scene in which they show a flashback that Amber wants to see this rare flower, and she goes with the father, but then they're stopped because, well, no fire. You can't watch it because it's fire. But then later in the movie, it kind of showcased that it's because that flower is underwater, and the only way to see it is by going underwater. So probably no fire is because they can't. There's no fire, and you know what? Now that I think about it, maybe they could have work along as a solution for that. But no, they just wanted to showcase, the racial profiling about in this movie, and I don't want it to be that kind of character, but it's kind of like. What character? I don't want to be this kind of guy. I just found it a little bit noticeable in this one. Although, don't worry, it's not it's not exactly in your face, but you kind of notice. And continue. All right, continue on with the special effects. It's doing fine. All this stuff. Oh yeah, another. I think now I can go with some elements that I found out with the movie. Another element that this movie kind of gave itself a little bit of a pat on the head is that they wanted to build up this sense of urgency, because this movie technically doesn't have an antagonist. It's one of those movies in which the main antagonist is basically Amber's self-doubt and what she wants, and her unsure commitment of her love with Wade and Amber. I think I said it right, and and also because she's not being very honest with her father about what she wants, what she wants to do, and all that. But the closest thing to an antagonist, or at least a sense of danger that it kind of comes up a little bit into the end of the movie, is that it is these water pipes that it all link up to this broken dam, in which apparently Amber and Wade are the ones who must find a solution to this, even though the city kind of knows. But apparently the movie finds itself an excuse or a loophole to see why the city doesn't do that, because if this thing breaks, it may cause fatalities, especially to the fire people, because fire people can't survive on water, and we're in a city in which they have to get along. But unfortunately, elements don't mix, and water and fire are technically dangerous hazard for themselves. So, and besides, why the city is not the one that that should be responsible for fixing the dam? And so basically, out of convenience, they find kind of like an antagonist based on nature. And you know what? That makes me think another thing. Why, if this is a world where there's water people, what is the water themselves that are not people? Why would the fire people will need a water pipes? It's almost, yeah. Now that I think about it, yeah. Why do they need a water? Fire people why do they need a water pipes? It's not like they drink the water. They drink gasoline. I mean, we show it. They show it in the trailer too. You know what I mean? The more I overanalyze this movie, I kind of find a problem in itself. And again, it's not a bad movie. It's just solid. Actually, there is one nitpick that I do want to say, and that is the ending. The ending is nice and all, but I didn't feel too much of an emotion, mostly because I am grown up and I knew it was gonna happen because I know science, and I knew that something scientific will happen, that I didn't buy the emotion. But some people did buy it, because I did hear some people crying during that moment. So if that moment affected you, good for you. Good for you. Oh yeah, you know what? I do also want to mention that, to hammer up a little bit more the metaphor of immigration in this movie, is that they do wanted to showcase that that the parents come from it comes from another fire city, from far away, and they move in because they were affected by a storm. And there's kind of like an arc in which the father didn't get the blessing from the other father, because, well, they just wanted to find a better future and all that stuff. In my head, I thought that maybe the movie would have been a little bit more harsh if if instead of moving out because of the storm, they've been moving out because there was war. Because some immigrants are actually refugees from war. And you know what? Now that I think about it, this is how this movie could have been a little bit more harsh, in which, instead of the fired people, the parents moving out because of a storm, let's make them move out because they just want to get away from a war against water people. And that could intensify a little bit more the father's hatred to the water people. And you see in the trailer that the father even get this hatred to Wade because, well, he's a water guy and he's an inspector and all that. Yeah, that's another few things that I had to say. But overall, I didn't think Elemental was bad. It's just that the world building, it brings out a little bit more questions than answers, if you analyze it. But if you don't overthink too much of the world building, you get a solid romance story with some bumps here, some bumps there, and you get it, and it is emotional. It has an emotional story. It has some interesting visuals. I like they did make the research on how some elements can create stuff. Like, for example, how when you burn sand, it creates glass. Yeah, it's just that I will consider this some kind of like a mid-tier Pixar movie, and it's not gonna exactly be kind of like my favorite Pixar movie, but I know that compared to Lightyear and Turning Red, this is actually a step up. And I think that I'm gonna feel that it's gonna do a lot better, because apart from that, I saw the trailer of the upcoming Pixar movie in 2024, which is, I think it was called Elio. You know what? I think I got it here. Elio, yeah, Elio. This Elio movie trailer felt interesting, and so Elemental. You know what? Give it a try. Check it out. It's technically sad that it bombed on the box office, but you know what? For Pixar standards, it could have been worse. uh, so take it from me. Take it from me. Uh, it's just the hottest. It's the hottest Pixar movie you're gonna get for a while.